educational topics for seniors throughout the year to help give you that information that you need to make the right decisions. And to help us out today, we have Benjie. He's from the Benjie agency, and he does insurance and financial consulting. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Thank you all for coming. I know we've got some folks still be moseying in here a little bit, so I'll probably drag on a little slowly as we see others come in. But thank you again for coming. And thank Elmcroft, of course, for having us. This is going to be an ongoing thing we're going to do each month. We'll continue to have educational workshops. And we've made it real simple for people like me to remember. So it'll be the last Friday of every month. So we'll continue to do this for Elmcroft throughout the year. We've got several different folks in this type of industry we've lined up. So we hopefully it'll continue to be helpful for you. Come back each Friday, have visit a little bit, have some breakfast, and get some useful information. So we'll talk more about that before we leave on who will be speaking next month, and kind of some of the things that we'll talk about for the remainder of the year. Something you may want to pass on to some of the groups you may be in, church groups, work, any circles of folks y'all can bring. Feel free to bring them in here. I know Ashley would appreciate it, and so would I. So we'll work on that. But and as well, if you have your own kind of circle of groups there, people that you like, i.e. church or other businesses that would like to do something of this nature, please feel free to contact us, and we can work out something to do some type of educational workshop that suits you guys, whatever group that may be. So, a little bit about me. Married, 2 children here that. Well, they run the household. I don't know who outranks who most of the time anymore. But the reason I'm doing this is right there, as you see on the screen there. So 13 years here in Florence. I was actually born here in Florence. Moved to Columbia after my father, who was in the industry before I came along. But he started as a manager here at Life Virginia right here in Florence. Was transferred to Columbia as a state manager, which was then bought by GE, now Genworth. And then from there, he became state manager for the MetLife office here at Columbia. So to say I was kind of weaned into this business is pretty obvious. It was in my blood, I guess, before I came. But along with that, I've been in the National Guard for 19 years. Did one tour in Iraq, and been on orders and off due to the obvious conflicts overseas throughout my career in the industry. So been back and forth. But Manning Agency established 20 plus years ago, again, like I said, by my father. And we've done business with agents all throughout the state. So it's an ongoing thing that now I've transferred from MetLife this past year and decided to go strictly as an independent agent here in Florence. So, and I'll have some information on myself, or you can contact me. But a few other people. Caleb White here is joining our firm this year. I just winged him away from MetLife. Great guy who's got a lot of experience now in a short period of time he's been in the industry. But he'll be joining us and work strictly out of Columbia with my father there on that end. And then Mr. John Floyd here, who's responsible for helping me out through the past years. I transitioned from a captive agent to a strictly independent agent, but he knew much more than that. And of course, retired colonel from National Guard. I'm a little bit on the spotlight here, so if I seem nervous, it's because he's evaluating everything I'm doing right now. So let's move on here. Hey, long-term care is short. Helps protect your assets, your family, and your future. That's in one simple sentence. That is long-term care insurance. Some of the things we will cover today, you'll see in the agenda. What is long-term care? Well, the chances of needing long-term care, and costs associated with long-term care. Where long-term care is received. Is long-term care insurance right for me? And why long-term care insurance? As you see, long-term care is the type of hands-on assistance you need you are able to perform basic activities of daily living. If you know what that's, your ADLs, bathing, dressing, transferring, those things. Require substantial supervision due to cognitive impairment. So as we said, the ADLs, eating, bathing, toileting, dressing, transferring. When we think of cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's, anything with the person's short, long-term memory, judgment, relate, safety, awareness, and we relate that to all the time. Chances of you needing long-term care. Well, as you see here, a healthy couple 65, today 50% likelihood of seeing one of those live to 92 today. People are living longer, as we know. But 55% of persons 85 years of age or older are going to receive long-term care. At age 65, we see 1 in 3 chances a person will enter a nursing home. And 40% currently receiving long-term care are under the age of 65. Most people don't realize that. That's probably one of the most important statistics. When we sit down and we talk about long-term care, you know, people continue to put it off, which is, in the insurance world, that's pretty common. You know, I'll do it later, I'm never going to die, I'm never going to need it. We say, you know, long-term care, well, one of the biggest things that people just don't realize that it strikes home a lot faster today. Modern medicine allows us to, you know, rebuild people's lives and get them back up. And that's, you know, a process. So that's probably one of the more alarming statistics that people just don't realize and should be aware of. And where we can receive long-term care, well, probably the biggest one is your home. It keeps you at home if you want to be at home. Probably the most important factor of long-term care. Most people, I don't want to be in a facility. Well, you know, that's why we've got long-term care. It gives you the option to decide whether home, an adult daycare, assisted living, nursing home, or hospice. All those things, obviously, the long-term care does provide benefits. I did a South Carolina average based on the Genworth's 2014 cost, which is pretty accurate. So if you look here, for nursing home in a private room, $73,000. Assisted living, annually $34,485, and now home health care, or home care, $41,184. I'm sure I'm talking to a group of people that probably know that those numbers can change drastically based on a number of different things, the type of facility you want to be in. When it comes to the assisted living, you know, you've got great retirement homes. In one right now that provides you different levels as you move through here, as far as the amount of care you need. But specifically for people looking at, when you're talking about long-term care, this is for South Carolina. So people need to realize that, you know, we're looking to retire long-term care. What does it mean? What do we need it for? Okay, I've decided I may want long-term care. Well, where you're going to retire might be a key issue to have, because those numbers are significantly different across the country. Obviously, you start looking in New York, you go back down to Florida, out toward California. It's a lot higher number than what we're seeing here. But as far as our group, I stuck with what was relative to us. Of course, I could give you a whole big graph to show you the difference in cost across the country, and we're relatively low here in South Carolina. But obviously, once you talk about a family member purchasing long-term care, a key issue to remember is where I may be retiring at. So because the cost can be significantly different. Who pays for long-term care? Well, your private company health care insurance. If you're under age 65, you're currently working, you could actually have some type of impairment where your private health insurance may be covering something for an extended period of time. Most of us think of Medicare when we think of long-term care, but as we know, Medicare will only pay for a certain period of time. Medicaid, and what we see most of the time in today is people using their personal assets or their family's personal assets. But, and hopefully, long-term care is a more financial means to take that long-term care need, take care of that long-term care. Covering the cost. You're talking skilled acute care, not designed to pay for long-term custodial care. So you think of it, you're trying to rehabilitate, maybe you've been injured, or you've been in the hospital, you're rehabilitating, you're getting through, you may be going through some type of occupational or physical therapy. It's short term, and gets you back up on your feet. Private company disability insurance, well, that's just to replace your income. That's not long-term care. Typically, it's going to end at specifically age 65, possibly, or some go to age 70. So the disability insurance is only going to cover you to a certain age. Medicaid, it's not something typically people want to use for several reasons, because it's going to require that we spend down our assets. In South Carolina, specifically, that's down to $2,000 of assets. So they want you to be poor, is what they're telling you. And that's what has to happen. If anyone haven't dealt with that, there's no loophole there. Anytime the government's going to get what if they're going to do anything for you, I promise you they're going to make sure you've met the qualifications of spending down everything you have. So, Medicare. Again, the Medicare is, we think about as very short term, what they cover. You're looking at a very specific time there. If you have Medicare, you most likely should have a Medicare supplement. That Medicare supplement, and with Medicare and the Medicare supplement, will carry you up to typically 100 days. 90 to 100 days is what you're going to see as coverage. So the Medicare is not necessarily for long-term care. It's more hospitalization. If you're going to receive any type of long-term care, you're going to be in a hospital prior to that. And then paying out of pocket, obviously the impact on your own income and your assets, family's assets, and just the overall impact of your family members. So I'm sure many of us have different scenarios, many experiences. I know my family personally has had plenty of those experiences on both sides. So it's something that most today people are dealing with it with one family member, spouse, or husband or wife, or parent. So the benefits of long-term care. Well, we don't want to depend on the government. As we see, that's probably the last thing we need to be dependent on is our government right now to take care of our long-term needs. Provides you the choice and control when you need care. So it does, having long-term care insurance does give you the opportunity to have some type of choice of when I may need care at home, when I need additional support, help doing those things of daily activities of daily living that we talked about. So it does give you more opportunity to use that as your comfort. Probably the biggest things that most people like and would focus on is helps maintain your independence and quality of life. I think that's what most people would strive to as they continue, as they reach retirement, and as we live longer today. But we like the thought of our own independence either way. Provides help and support you and your family when you need care. Most of the top companies that you would use, I would recommend you using, and that are still in the industry today. We have a lot that used to do this, that now that claims are being paid much more frequently, a lot of the insurance companies have gotten out of the business. But those that are still doing it, the top-rated companies that do, they usually provide a lot of these things, and most importantly, the caregiver support services, assist families. So when you have a family member who reaches the need where they need the actual care, they're going to have a support, or what they would call a caregiver support service. They would just assign to you someone you could call, ask those questions. Hey, I'm looking at this facility. I'm looking at this facility, and they do a little bit more research for you. But all of the top companies that are right long-term care in South Carolina right now, all of them pretty much provide the same level of service. And obviously it can be very helpful for a family who might not have other family members, or a lot of friends who might have moved here to take care of a family member. So pretty important when you're a thing that they can provide for you. Tax deduction. Most individuals don't realize that your long-term care premiums are a medical expense, and they do allow you to deduct a certain amount of the premiums each year, which we will have those for you Mr. Floyd has brought for me to pass out for 2014 and 15 to show you, based on your age, what you can deduct each year for the premium dollar. So many people don't realize that, but obviously that's something very important to take into account, especially as we reach our tax season here again. Some things you might want to know. Business owners may be able to deduct up to 100% of the premiums paid. So if you have small business owners, obviously a very key way for them to both take advantage of the taxation on premiums that they could look at, and obviously gain from the benefit as well. Reason to consider, your premiums are based on your age. Every year you roll over into a different, what they would call an age bracket. So 74 to 75, you probably see, most companies at 75 would stop issuing long-term care out. As you look at it earlier in life, 56 versus 59 or 60, there's going to be a significant difference there in premium again. So some things to take into account. Obviously I'm going to live forever. I'm never going to need long-term care, but my spouse is, so we'll look at her and see what she might need. So however you might want to take a look at it, the reasons that each year those premium dollars are going to continue to grow, and they're not going to get cheaper as we continue to grow because people continue to use it. I probably didn't know this, but the insurance companies are in business to make money. So the more they pay out, the more premium dollar goes up, and people will continue to live longer, so premiums will continue to get higher. A good example, good statistic of this, since 1990, the cost of nursing home care has grown by 5.8% annually, which is about double the rate of inflation. So you can see that it's going to continue to grow. I don't care if it's the premium dollar, I don't care the care you're looking at. Just the simple fact is, modern medicine has continued to improve. We continue to live longer. These costs just continue to go up. Some of the leading companies here are very important today that you know what those companies are. 10 years ago, there would probably be, this list was 3 times as long of who were the leading insurance companies. That's not the case anymore because these insurance companies are paying out benefit again, like we talked about. So that list has quickly gotten smaller. So as you look at long-term care, that's one of the things our agency does. It's going to give you, we're going to look at all of them. And there's not one company that's better today that I can tell you is going to be the best thing for you. It's probably going to look at a couple of different companies, and there might be a couple of different riders, or cost is going to obviously come into effect, but there's going to be a few different things on every company that's just going to fit your need. That's kind of the benefit of working with someone who's going to be able to look at each company out there and give you kind of the best snapshot of what may work or not work for me. When you're applying or you're building up the policy, obviously some of the things we talked about, typically most of those companies, 18 to 79, you can actually apply for long-term care. Benefit amounts, they go based on choosing a monthly or a daily benefit amount. Monthly starts usually around $1,500 a month and go all the way up to $15,000. Daily benefit would be starting at $50 to $500 a day. Talk about multiplier for benefit amount. Guaranteeing you a benefit for a certain number of years. You'll see here some companies now they break it down in days, and some of them show years. But for people like me, I went ahead and put both of them up there so we can talk through. But you can have a 2-year, 3-year. Some companies go all the way up to 10-year. But what that benefit multiplier is it's guaranteeing you buying an amount of coverage for a period of time. Meaning giving you a 7-year plan, it's a $1,500 monthly benefit. Well, you've got a 7-year, that may not, over a period of time, that money might run out, but they may guarantee you that 7 years of coverage. So the multiplier is what you're guaranteeing as you purchase each different type of policy. Simplicity, we just show that you can do it daily, the monthly, the money, 5-year plan, it comes out the same. You're buying a bucket of money. Simply put, I'm buying the company's bucket of money for my long-term care need. Deductibles, when we talk about the elimination period, that's how many days before that insurance company is going to pay. Typically we use, for most individuals applying, we'll use a 90-day elimination period. Most that's because more likely than not it'll be 65, and it's your Medicare supplement, and Medicare and Medicare supplement will cover you during that first 90 days. So then your long-term care would kick in. Also, the 90 days is about where the premium dollar helps keep it lower as well. Obviously, if you've had a 30 days, that means they're going to pay out pretty fast, so the premium dollar is much higher. So the 90-day service is for 2 reasons. One, your Medicare supplement will carry you and give you that care that's needed for the first 100 days. And then also the premium dollar is going to be much different if you go, when you talk about 60 or 30 days. Policy building blocks is some of the, what they call cash benefit, where they may pay, not all the companies do this, but they may pay maybe your sister, maybe your daughter, maybe your neighbor, but they may actually pay a cash benefit out where you would pay someone like that to maybe coming in to give you the type of care you need. Not all companies do that the same, so it would be something you would look specifically for the company you're looking at there as far as applying for, but it's questions you need to ask. So that's why I put all these up here. Most of these are now covered when you're purchasing a long-term care policy. Nursing home benefit, assisted living facility, home health care, stay-at-home benefit. Most of those are pretty standard, but it's just something you need to know and need to ask me to make sure that they do provide. They all don't, however, provide what last one here. That's bed reservation benefit. You may be out, you may leave a facility where you're receiving long-term care, have to go to the hospital. They may, long-term care insurance may actually reserve that bed for you for 30, 60, 90 days, depending on the type of policy you've got. So depending on the company and who may still provide that rider, but the bed reservation is obviously a pretty critical piece that you need to ask about when you're looking at long-term care policy. Some other things, your shared care, that husband and wife purchased a long-term care policy, and one, is going to live to 85, while, her husband's going to need continued care for 5 years, and he's used all of his benefit. Well, with the shared care benefit, he can now go over there and use his wife's benefit as well if she's not using it. So it allows it, when costs get so high that we've used all of one spouse's benefit, we can actually go over there and use the other spouse's benefit. Waiver of elimination period for home health care. So the day you needed someone to assist you at home, they would waive that elimination period. Most of those do have that right in there now. Return of death premium at death. Again, little hint: the insurance company's here to make money. You're asking them to return the premium at your death. The premium dollar is much higher when you add this little rider on there. Sometimes it makes sense for some people to do that, but more times than not, return of premium, it can be a little costly and it doesn't meet most people's need. The inflation protection benefit, however, that's much more important. We talked about how fast the cost of long-term care has grown. I would recommend in most cases that anyone have some type of inflation protection placed on their policy. Most companies now have broken it down. You've got 3, 4, or 5% increase. You can do what is compounding, or you can do a simple inflation protection. Obviously, if you can do 5% compound, that would be ideal, because we see what the cost has grown over time. But putting something, some type of inflation protection on there is important. So, but you've got to do what makes sense, obviously. So if you question what's affordable today, it does you no good to keep it for 4 years and decide and let a policy go. So, you know, align to that policy to what it is both your current financial, you know, means, but also looking at down the road, you know, will it keep up with the cost of long-term care overall? Typically, we sit down with folks, just some things we look at or ask, and that's, we talk about living wills, trusts, durable power of attorneys. Why? Because long-term care, all these things are going to come into factor. So we definitely, these are some of the things we look at and are going to ask about when we talk about long-term care. If you sit down with somebody and you know are looking at long-term care, you should have these things because your medical power of attorney, your living will, and even trust, how my assets are transferred and so forth, that all takes into account on what this long-term care is supposed to provide for you. So, because long-term care is protecting your assets, so all these things come into effect. And I'll speak about this again before we leave. I've got one video here I think is relevant. I want to show you. It's a great example of what people go through today. I think it talks about everything that we've just spoken about, but puts a little bit more of a human touch on this. If it'll come up.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Wayne, and I'm her youngest daughter, and a primary caregiver and guardian.
It's been 9 years since Mary Wyant was first diagnosed with Alzheimer's. In 2006, she moved in with her daughter, making Rebecca part of a growing population of Americans, now nearly 1 in 5 adults, who provide unpaid care for family members over the age of 50. Rebecca says her mother used to be a fun-loving and vibrant artist who was always at the center of attention.
Very creative, very outgoing, very gregarious, very much a social butterfly. Just really liked to be around people, and she could take nothing and create something magnificent from that. So, very smart, but more, I think, anything, was just her energy and her social skills and her ability to engage with people, with anybody.
Today, that Mary still comes out from time to time, but often it's seen only in short spurts and can be followed by rapid mood swings, incoherent outbursts, and blank stares. Mary exhibits all the symptoms of what the Alzheimer's Association has called the defining disease of baby boomers, with 10 million in that age group expected to develop this form of dementia in the coming years. Jeanette Wendt is Mary's neurologist.
She has very severe language difficulties and has very severe memory problems and really has the inability to take care of herself in almost all aspects.
Moving to Tucson was a homecoming of sorts for Mary, who had raised her daughters there, but had been living in Central America with her second husband. When the marriage fell apart, Rebecca became Mary's legal guardian and her primary caregiver. Rebecca, who's 48 years old and unmarried, is now on call from the moment Mary wakes up every morning, getting her mother out of bed and dressed, and then helping to brush her teeth, combing her hair, and figuring out new strategies for medication. It can be stressful and difficult.
It's a 115-pound 2-year-old who's not potty trained.
Even awkward at times in public.
People still, when they talk to her, speak in a very loud voice because they think people lost and can't hear. Or they speak very slowly, and I try and explain to them, she's not understanding what you're saying, so you don't have to worry about that. I mean, just speak in your normal voice and just go with the flow. But it's very uncomfortable for a lot of people because they don't understand the disease. And the problem is for every single person with Alzheimer's is totally different.
But Rebecca says people need to understand that her family's situation, all of it, is normal and not without its special moments.
Every now and then I don't know what sparks in her mind that she'll say, oh, and she'll turn and she'll look at me and she has something to say to me. You can just see it in her face. And then it's gone. But that moment, you just know, I know she's still in there. So when she manages to let a little bit of that out, it's wonderful.
Rebecca owns a self-serve dog wash and retail business and brings Mary to work. She'll stay until the shop closes in the evening. It's round-the-clock care that Rebecca says she was willing to take on for one simple reason.
Nobody can take care of my mother the way I can. Nobody understands my mother the way I do. And someone can take care of her and provide sustenance, but no one can take care of her the way I can.
And the experiences of the Wyatt family will likely be shared by millions in the coming decades. The number of Americans 65 and older is expected to more than double in the next 40 years, due in large part to aging baby boomers. The government estimates 70% of those over the age of 65 will need some form of long-term care. But a recent poll conducted by the Associated Press and the National Opinion Research Center found nearly 2/3 of Americans over the age of 40 have done little or no planning for their potential long-term care needs, such as setting aside money or talking with family members about how they want to be cared for. That survey was funded by the SCAN Foundation, which is a NewsHour underwriter. Again, Dr. Jeanette Wendt.
The vast majority have not thought about it and have not made plans. Even if they have an inkling or they even in their heart know that's what's going on, one, they don't want to address it with the person who has the problem.
And until it became clear Mary would need long-term care, the Wyatts hadn't discussed the subject either.
There was really no long-term planning. It's just like, right now, what do we have to do? Right now, someone's got to be your guardian, because I've got to have the ability to make decisions for her on any level. And we didn't want to wait until it got so bad.
The issues around aging are easy to ignore and often difficult to talk about and address. But communities around the country, including Tucson, have long had federally funded programs that are supposed to help people like the Wyatts. In 1965, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Older Americans Act, which provided for the creation of a national network of agencies on aging to support community social services for older people. Tucson's Pima Council on Aging is one, with caregiver specialists like Susie Moore.
Often people will come in for a parent, but then they'll think, okay, this tells me I need to do my own powers of attorney. I need to think about how I'm going to pay for long-term care. You know, so I think most people, they need to think about the fact that whatever care they may develop a need for is going to be very costly.
Orb also connects caregivers to experts in services, and Rebecca has contacted the agency several times with basic questions. But like many organizations dealing with budget cuts, this one has to do what it can with less. It's had to cut back on how many people it serves.
The population of the, over 60 in Tucson has greatly increased, so we're not meeting the need even as well as we did 20 years ago.
That means caregivers like Rebecca Wyatt often must navigate a complicated and opaque healthcare system practically alone. Rebecca had been paying for Mary's care with her own earnings and with her mother's assets. But when Mary's money was gone, she qualified for financial assistance through Arizona's long-term care program. The enrollment process took several years. Now the state pays Rebecca for some of the time she spent looking after her mother, 14 hours each week, or roughly $500 a month. It's a small amount, but money Rebecca says she's immensely grateful for.
I'm not being paid by someone else. I don't have a paycheck that I bring home every 2 weeks. I don't have benefits that I receive from an employer. If the business makes some money, that doesn't necessarily come to me. It goes back into the business. So any little bit helps.
But long-term care doesn't just exhaust financial resources. Dr. Wendt is concerned that, like many full-time caregivers, Rebecca may be putting her own health at risk.
She's a great caregiver, but I think she is at great risk of burnout because you never know what they're going to do in the middle of the night. You never know if they're going to get up and try to leave the house or turn the stove on and try to make something or burn the house down. I mean, it's really always on edge, and so it's extremely stressful.
Rebecca, as a small business owner, has been unable to find affordable health insurance that could help her manage the physical and emotional toll. And she says she also doesn't have the money to put her mother into a long-term care facility she'd be comfortable with. Even so, she's happy to still have Mary at home.
It's not always perfect, but she's my mother, and so that's the way you have to look at this disease. You can't dwell on what was or what might be. It's what it is today. And so she's alive, she's functioning, she's getting up, she's moving around, she has happy moments and not so happy moments, but it's not a sad situation.
Rebecca plans to take care of Mary for as long as she possibly can, even if she has to sell her business to do it.
Okay.
Good morning, residents. Exercise and devotion will be held in the front lobby starting at 10 o'clock.
Good.
Exercise
We'll
and
make it.
devotion will be held in the front lobby starting at 10 o'clock.
Again, that's pretty realistic. I hope that wasn't too long, but that is long-term care. That's from everybody's angle. So again, I know many of you may have plenty of experiences with long-term care and these things, but I thought that was a good depiction of what people deal with on a daily basis. Again, thank you for your time and here, Ashley, for having me. And a little bit about what the Benjie Agency can do for you as far as long-term care. And that's one is give you some long-term care options. You know, what fits for you, what makes sense for you. Long-term care insurance company specific information. Obviously, we can provide that to you as well. So you look at a company you're in question, or maybe you're comparing. Give us the opportunity to get you that information. And then maybe you have a current policy you need to review. Feel free to give us a call for that. So again, some of the things we can do for you. I hope you got something out of it today. Appreciate you being here and your time and bearing with me as I stumble through some of these IT problems as I usually have. So, but again, for next month, if you have anybody you know and can invite Gina Irvin, an attorney here in town that has worked with a little bit. She's going to be discussing durable power of attorneys, trust, wills, specifically South Carolina. We're going to talk a little bit about asset transfer, some things that are specific to the senior market, what we should know, what we should be aware of prior to developing one. If you have something in place, maybe how you can get it changed. So anyway, she'll be speaking next month, so feel free to have invite any other folks you may know. Thank you again for your time. Look forward to it. Thank you, Ashley, again for having us, and I hope to see y'all next month again. If you want to, I've got Caleb. If you'll hand those out to some folks, you have a little bit of information before we leave. And I've got some cards here. If anybody has any reason you'd like to contact, feel free.